Hear ye, hear ye. Today we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks and some $6 million contracts that they have on their payroll that they might actually start giving up. Now, last time we had been focusing so much on a $6 million player, you all know exactly who it is I'm referring to. I'm talking about Loui Eriksson. We had spent the better part of 3 years talking about trading this guy, and Jim Benning's biggest mistake of signing him to a 6x6 and $6 million just became a meme amongst the fan base, and eventually he did get traded in a deal that saw the Arizona Coyotes take on a whole bunch of short-term salary for Beagle, Roussel, and Eriksson in exchange for a longer-term contract in Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And that trade, from a financial standpoint, sucks. But there is indeed another $6 million man on the Vancouver Canucks that has some sort of a meme-ish reputation as well. It's Tyler Myers, and Myers has been particularly big over the past few years, not just in terms of his size itself, but in terms of the conversations about him, because as the $6 million paid defenseman that he is, 6'8", 229 pounds, Tyler Myers was signed to this contract all the way back in, 2019, and it's 5 years long, so it's going on until 2024. He has got a no-trade clause at this moment in time, and for Myers and the way that he's played, he has not really been a player that has honestly justified that $6 million price tag. Sure, he has had 36, 31-point seasons with the Winnipeg Jets in the past, but that offensive flair has not been there with the Vancouver Canucks. He had 18 points in 82 games this recent season. He actually had 21 points in 55 games last year, which, if you do the math, was on pace for 21 divided by 55 multiplied out by 82. He would have been on pace for 31 points that season, but the Canucks were so bad that it's kind of tough to find a limelight for anybody on that season. But for Tyler Myers and the way he's played, he certainly has not been a $6 million guy. While sure, he has improved his defensive play over the past 12 months, he's still made his popularity known amongst the Vancouver Canucks fan base for his frequent dives while defending 2-on-1s, his frequent pinches that don't result in positive plays, as well as his giveaways. There has been a little bit of a scapegoat blame game going on with bigger defensemen like Erik Edvinsson. You have Tyler Myers tossed in there, and even guys that aren't really all too big like Lucas Spiza. They've all kind of been the punching bags for Vancouver Canucks fans when it comes to blaming the D. And even though I will say Myers has improved this previous season, he certainly was a lot more reliable now than he had been in the past, he's still not a $6 million defenseman. But the thing is, he is right-handed, and he is big. And when it comes to NHL GMs, you talk about players that are big and right-handed and defensemen, and you usually come to the conclusion that NHL GMs see a certain amount of value that is there just because they are big right-handed and defensemen. Which is why if you go over to Twitter and you search up some of the things that have been shared on Tyler Myers from recent NHL insiders, it kind of gets you wondering, what exactly is going to go on here? This is what Rick Dhaliwal said yesterday from Elliotte Friedman's interview on Donnie and Dolly. Vancouver has a price for Tyler Myers, and if you're willing to pay that, they will talk to you. You also had David Pagnotta, the fourth period, who said this: I'm expecting to hear the name of Canucks defenseman Tyler Myers a little bit more over the next couple of weeks. His full no-trade clause turns into a 10-team no-trade list, and I'm told that Vancouver is open to moving him for the right deal. He has 2 years left on his contract at a $6 million cap hit. And so now, for the first time in a few years, we are legitimately talking about Tyler Myers as an actual trade candidate, and I wanted to talk about just the isolated parts of that by itself before we talk about some other conversations this could be combined with, particularly JT Miller, but some of the replies to these tweets are kind of funny. The first reply to the Rick Dhaliwal tweet from Pablo shot in the crest: what is the price for Tyler Myers? Free. Trevor Connors had the same joke. Here's the price, $0. And so this is just kind of the meme status reinforcing itself, right? A lot of Canucks fans jumping on the hating Tyler Myers train because he's big, because he turns the puck over, and because he's a guy who's easy to hate. If you go over to the Pagnotta tweet, the first reply here is woof, and it shows off his advanced analytics and how they've declined over the past few years. So if there is indeed a trade for Tyler Myers where the Vancouver Canucks have a price of, let's just say, a mid-round pick and maybe a prospect or something like that, The fact that any team is going to go out there and pay it means that big right-handed defensemen that are making $6 million a year actually do have value because they're big right-handed defensemen, not because Tyler Myers is a $6 million defenseman. Now, I will say that if Tyler Myers does get moved, at the very least, you would need to find somebody to replace those minutes because it would be kind of foolish to neglect what it is that Tyler Myers does. If you go over to Tyler Myers and his NHL profile, because it actually says everything on here, he averaged 21 minutes of time on ice per game, so that's a lot of minutes right there. Definitely something that you don't want to say is easily replaceable for this big right-handed defenseman, especially on a team like Vancouver, where the right-handed defenseman depth is not great. You have Myers, you have Schenn, who is good, but he's not a top guy. You have Tucker Pullman, who I really just don't like, and then you have Jet Wu in the AHL, who's not really all too great yet either, so you're gonna have to find somebody to replace those minutes. And the fact is, anybody that can actually fill a 20-minute per night role is not going to be cheap, whether or not you find them in free agency or in any sort of trade. Tyler Myers, even though he might have some value in the trade market, a lot of Canucks fans would immediately jump to the conclusion that he has negative value because of the poor performance that he's shown in the past, which is why we have seen some speculation, not really from any reputable insiders, but just kind of ideas tossed around by Canucks fans as to whether or not Tyler Myers could actually get traded in a package with JT Miller. Now, Miller is probably going to get traded soon. By the time this video is uploaded, he might have already gotten traded. Who really knows? But if there is a trade that's like, I don't know, Miller and Myers for X, who knows what some other team might perceive that to be. Maybe they think, okay, you have JT Miller who is valuable, but then if you add on Myers, all of a sudden this trade package is not as valuable because Myers is not that great. Maybe that increases the likelihood that a Miller trade gets done because the Vancouver Canucks all of a sudden are not demanding so much if they add on Tyler Myers to the picture because he's making $6 million, he's big and he's got a few more years, and he also has a 10-team no-trade list as opposed to a full no-trade clause. Who really knows if that's the case here? I would certainly understand the argument of including these two together in a trade to make it easier for teams to stomach the JT Miller return because obviously he's worth so much. But at the same time, do you want to go out there devaluing your own assets in the way that you would if you traded away Miller with Myers rather than just trading Miller by himself? That's another question for another day. Now, when it comes to some potential suitors, here's something that I wanted to throw up on the screen right here. This is what Joe DiBiase said. Sneaky Joe Sports on Twitter, who is on the Buffalo Bills radio network pregame. He does WGR 550 Sports Talk radio stuff as well. He said this: imagine if Vancouver wouldn't talk to you if you were willing to give them what they wanted for Tyler Myers. Number 2, I'm into a Myers reunion if it's cheap. Now, DiBiase, I'll go out there and say this right here for the sake of you Buffalo folk over there trying to maybe reunite with your former Calder winner. Yeah, that's right, Tyler Myers is a Calder winner, baby. He's in the same tier as Kirill Kaprizov. The price is probably not going to be too much. Like, don't get it twisted, the way Friedman proposed the idea on the show and the way Dhaliwal wrote about it on Twitter and the way that David Pagnotta wrote about it too, I guess they're saying it in the way that's like, okay, there's a negotiation to be had here, right? Because there's a price, and if you're willing to pay it, then maybe we can get it done. But like, Rutherford and Alvin have stressed so much that they really want a fast team, and while Myers does have the potential to maybe turn on the Jets once every, 30 games, the guy just really doesn't fit the type of style that Rutherford and Alvin want to have on this team. When it comes to breaking the puck out of their own zone, Tyler Myers is not that great at that. When it comes to turning on the Jets and picking up the pace, Tyler Myers is not great at that. There are many reasons for me to believe that the way Tyler Myers is perceived amongst this new regime that is not run by Benning, it's not really all too great. And I would assume that the trade price is not really going to be all too high either. If the Vancouver Canucks can even just get a draft pick or something, let's say a second or a third, then okay, I honestly would do that. Sure, you would have a tough time filling out the player to get those minutes in return, but if the Vancouver Canucks are going to take a step back next year, maybe tank for Connor Bedard, whatever, I'd be okay with that too. If you're going to lose out on Miller, you can't really expect the team to be getting better, right? And with Miller and his contract situation, you know the team cannot afford a longer-term deal because the way he's going to play into the next decade, who knows how sustainable he's going to be. We've already discussed the entire philosophy of trading away a JT Miller, and if you're trading away Myers on top of that, that's a 21-minute defenseman getting sent away out of the system as well, so there's a lot more reason for me to believe that the price would be a lot lower than assumed if you're from another fan base looking on the outside inside. So, talk to the comments all your thoughts about Tyler Myers and the idea of the Vancouver Canucks trading him away. What do you think is an appropriate trade price? Are you just gonna meme like the other Canucks fans did in the comments of that Rick Dhaliwal tweet saying, hey, the price is free, take him, we don't want him? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Rosén 99, and bye.